Rain fell like shards of glass that night in Seoul. The streets were empty except for one delivery girl struggling to balance her bike against the wind. Her name was Amara, a Nigerian immigrant who had learned to survive every kind of storm. But nothing prepared her for what she was about to find. The order was strange. No name, no apartment number, just an address outside the city. She almost ignored it, but something in her gut told her to go. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe fate. When she arrived at the mansion, the gates were wide open. Her footsteps echoed against marble floors soaked with blood. Then she saw him, a man lying on the ground, barely breathing, clutching two crying infants to his chest. Her breath caught. The babies were no older than a few months, their tiny fingers stained red from his blood. "Sir, please stay awake. I'll call an ambulance," she said, panic trembling in her voice. But before she could reach her phone, his hand gripped her wrist, strong, desperate. "Don't call the police. They'll kill them. My twins." Then his eyes rolled back, and silence filled the room except for the baby's cries and the sound of thunder outside. Amara didn't think twice. She wrapped the babies in her jacket, dragged the man to her scooter, and sped into the storm. She had no idea she just saved Kang Ji-Won, the most feared man in Korea. 2 hours later, inside a rundown clinic, Amara paced nervously. Her savings were gone, used to pay for emergency treatment. The doctor didn't ask questions. The look in his eyes said enough. When the man finally woke up, his first words weren't, "Thank you." They were, "Where are my children?" Amara pointed to the corner, where the twins lay sleeping beside a portable heater. Her voice softened. "They're safe. You lost a lot of blood. You need rest." He looked at her, confused by her accent, her courage, and the fact that she didn't seem scared. Most people would have run the moment they saw him. Days passed. He healed slowly, speaking little. Amara learned his name was Ji-Won, but he refused to say more. He paid her back double for the hospital bills and told her to disappear. But she couldn't. The babies cried whenever she tried to leave. Something about them, about him, pulled her back. Late one night, as Amara fed one of the twins, she whispered, "You don't even smile, do you?" He looked up from the shadows, the faintest smirk on his lips. "Smiles get you killed where I'm from." She didn't know it yet, but every word he spoke carried the weight of blood and betrayal. A week later, while Amara was out buying diapers, men in black suits stormed the clinic. Gunfire shattered the windows. Ji-Won barely managed to escape, his wound reopening. He waited for her outside in the rain, twins in hand. When she saw him, she froze. "What happened?" "They found me. I can't stay here. I need a place to hide." And that's how a delivery girl ended up hiding a mafia boss in her one-room apartment in Itaewon. For the first time in his life, Kang Ji-Won didn't have guards, guns, or control. Just a mattress on the floor and a woman who spoke to him like he was human. Amara didn't ask questions. She cooked for him, watched over the babies, and even scolded him when he tried to stand too soon. She didn't know who he really was, not yet, but she saw something no one else did, a father trying to survive for his children. At night, he'd wake up screaming, flashes of gunfire, a woman's voice calling his name. She'd sit beside him quietly, whispering, "You're safe here. Nobody's coming." For the first time in years, he believed it. One morning, Amara left early for a delivery run. Ji-Won stayed behind with the twins. But when her phone was stolen by a street kid, it led his enemies right to them. By evening, black cars surrounded the neighborhood. Ji-Won recognized the sound of those engines. His heart froze. He grabbed his twins and waited by the window. When Amara returned and saw the men, fear washed over her. "Who are they?" He looked at her, his voice dark. "The past I can't escape." Gunfire erupted. Ji-Won shielded her and the babies, taking a bullet to the arm. As she dragged him to safety, she screamed, "Who are you really?" He hesitated, blood dripping, eyes burning. "I'm the reason men like that exist. I'm the one they called the ghost of Seoul." Her eyes widened. "You're the mafia boss?" He looked away. "I was. Until the night my wife was killed. Until they turned on me." Amara's world tilted. The man she nursed back to life was the monster every news headline warned about. She wanted to run, but when the twins started crying, something inside her broke. She couldn't leave them, or him. For days, they hid again. She treated his wound, refusing to speak. He watched her silently, guilt tearing him apart. Finally, he said, "I don't expect forgiveness. But if you ever believed in the man who held his children instead of a gun, believe in that man one last time." Those words cracked her walls. She saw not the monster, but the man trying to be better. Together, they planned their move. Amara used her street delivery routes to smuggle messages across the city, helping Ji-Won track his betrayers. And one fateful night, she rode with him to the Seoul docks, where the final confrontation would decide everything. Min-soo, Ji-Won's former right-hand man, stood waiting with his men. "You should have stayed dead," he sneered. Ji-Won smirked. "You should have finished the job." Bullets flew, chaos erupted. And in the middle of it all, Amara ran straight into danger, using a GPS tracker hidden in her helmet to lead Ji-Won's allies to the scene. By dawn, the docks were silent. The Empire of Blood had fallen. Weeks later, the news headlines spoke of explosions, disappearances, and a reformed businessman vanishing from Seoul. But in a small cafe in Itaewon, laughter filled the air. Amara named it Twins and Coffee. Every morning, Ji-Won dropped by quietly with his children. They never talked about the past, just the present and the peace they fought for. And every night before closing, Amara would whisper to herself, "He was the ruthless mafia boss the world feared. But to me, he's the man who held his twins, bleeding, and still refused to let go." If you're still watching this story, it means you felt something. Maybe pain, maybe hope. Subscribe to Afro-Korean Stories Hub and share this story with someone who believes even broken people can find redemption. Because sometimes, love isn't born in heaven. It's born in the middle of a storm. 3 years later, Seoul had changed, but the ghosts never really left. Inside a cozy cafe in Itaewon, the smell of fresh pastries filled the air. Amara's dream had finally come true. Twins and Coffee had become a small haven for mothers, students, and tired souls. To everyone else, it was just a warm cafe, but to her, it was a symbol of survival. Her twins, Hannah and Jay, were now 3, full of laughter and mischief. They had his sharp eyes and her stubborn heart. Every evening, Kang Ji-Won would walk in quietly, wearing a plain suit instead of the designer ones he once used to command fear. He no longer looked like the man who once ruled Seoul's underworld. He looked like a father trying to live an ordinary life. But peace is a fragile thing, especially for men who once made enemies of kings. That night, as Amara closed the cafe, a car she didn't recognize parked across the street. The driver never stepped out, but the engine never stopped. Her instincts kicked in. She pretended not to notice and texted Ji-Won, "Someone's watching the shop." He replied almost instantly, "Don't leave yet. I'm coming." Minutes later, he appeared, calm, composed, but his eyes told a different story. The moment he saw the car, his jaw tightened. "Get the twins inside. Lock the door," he whispered. When he approached the car, the driver rolled down the window, a young man with a scar along his neck. He smiled. "Mr. Kang, my boss sends his regards." Ji-Won froze. That phrase, it belonged to one man, Min-soo's successor. Before he could react, the car sped off, leaving an envelope on the pavement. Inside was a photograph. Hannah, their daughter, playing outside the school earlier that day. A single line was scrawled on the back. "She looks just like your wife." The color drained from his face. Someone had found them. That night, Ji-Won didn't sleep. He stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker, hand trembling as he held the photo. Amara came up behind him. "Talk to me. What's happening?" He turned slowly, voice low. "They know where we are. Someone's been watching the twins for weeks. This isn't random." Amara's heart pounded. "You said it was over, Ji-Won. You promised." "I thought it was," he cut in, pain flashing in his eyes. "But men like me don't get peace. We just buy time." 2 days later, it happened. The worst thing imaginable. Amara was late picking up the twins from preschool. When she arrived, only Jay ran into her arms, crying. The teacher's face was pale. A man said he was family. He showed ID. He took Hannah. Her knees gave out. The world went silent. Ji-Won arrived minutes later, eyes blazing with a fury she'd never seen. He didn't say a word. He just picked up Jay, handed him to Amara, and left. That night, the ruthless man she once nursed back to life returned. His eyes darkened. The quiet father was gone. The ghost of Seoul had risen again. Amara tried to stop him, trembling. Please, don't go back there. You promised me you were done with that life. He turned to her slowly. They took my daughter. I'll burn down the city if I have to. Before leaving, he kissed Jay's forehead, whispered something in Korean Amara couldn't understand, and disappeared into the rain. For 3 days, she didn't hear from him. News reports began talking about gang violence in the harbor districts again. Bodies were found, warehouses burned, whispers of the old Mafia returning, led by a man no one could identify. Amara knew it was him. But then, on the 4th night, she received a message from an unknown number. A voice note. It was Hannah, crying. Appa. I'm scared. The man said Appa hurt him. Amara's heart broke. The voice was distant, trembling, surrounded by echoes of metal. She knew it, the docks. The same place where Ji-Won once ended his war. She grabbed her jacket and left before dawn, leaving Jay in the care of a friend. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. The rain returned, just like the night she first met him. Fate, it seemed, had brought her full circle. When she reached the docks, she saw the fire in the distance, the flash of gunfire, and Ji-Won standing in the middle of it all, blood on his hands, rage in his eyes, shouting Hannah's name. Amara screamed. Ji-Won, stop! He turned. For a second, relief washed over his face when he saw her, but then a shot rang out. His shoulder jerked back. He fell to his knees. Amara ran to him, ignoring the bullets, tears blurring her vision. Please, stay with me, she cried, pressing against his wound. He looked at her, voice faint. They took her inside. Don't let them take her too. Amara stood, trembling but determined. She had faced fear before, but never like this. She followed the sound of Hannah's cries into the warehouse. Inside, Min-soo's successor waited, the young man with the scar. The infamous Amara, he said coldly. The woman who made the devil fall in love. She glared at him. Where is my daughter? He pointed to a crate. Hannah was tied but unharmed, tears streaking her face. Your daughter for his life, he said. Walk away now, and I'll let her live. Amara hesitated, until she saw Ji-Won crawling toward them, blood trailing behind him. No, she whispered, realizing what he was about to do. He pulled a hidden pistol from his jacket, raised it weakly, and shot the man once in the chest. The impact echoed through the empty warehouse. Hannah screamed. Ji-Won collapsed. Amara ran to him, clutching him as the rain poured through the broken roof. You promised we'd live free, she whispered. He smiled weakly, blood staining his lips. And now you can. You, and our children. She shook her head, sobbing. No. Don't you dare leave me again. But his eyes were already fading, his hand still clutching hers. You saved me twice, Amara. Once from death, and once from myself. Then he went still. The sirens wailed in the distance. The warehouse burned behind her. Amara held his body close as Hannah cried beside her. For the second time in her life, she carried a man she loved through the rain. Back at the cafe weeks later, there was no laughter. Just the quiet hum of a music box Hannah loved. A tune Ji-Won used to whistle. The twins grew up knowing their father's story, not as the mafia boss the world feared, but as the man who died protecting them. And every year, on the anniversary of that night, Amara would light a candle by the window, whispering softly, even the ruthless deserve redemption. If this story touched your heart, take a second to subscribe and share it with someone who still believes love can heal even the darkest souls. Because sometimes, The most dangerous man in the world is also the one who loved the hardest. Years passed. The wounds of the past healed, but the scars remained. Seoul moved on, unaware of the quiet legend that lived behind a small cafe window. Hannah and Jae grew up with only fragments of their father's story, whispered pieces from their mother, photographs hidden in drawers, and a name that carried weight even when unspoken: Kang Ji-Won. Amara did her best to give them peace. She worked tirelessly, smiled through pain, and turned her grief into strength. To customers, she was the gentle cafe owner with a warm laugh. To her children, she was home. But to the ghosts of Seoul's underworld, she was still the woman who made the ghost disappear. Hannah was 16 now, fiery and sharp-eyed like her father. Jae was quieter, observant, the thinker of the two. Where Hannah sought answers, Jae sought peace. One rainy afternoon, just like the night Amara's life changed, Hannah wandered into the storage room of the cafe looking for her sketchbook. A loose wooden plank caught her attention. Behind it was an old metal box wrapped in black cloth. Curiosity turned to disbelief as she opened it. Inside were faded letters, a silver watch engraved with "For Amara, my light in the storm," and a flash drive labeled "For when they're old enough." Her hands trembled as she plugged it into her laptop. A video began to play. Her father's face filled the screen. Older, weary, but still handsome, still powerful. His eyes carried both love and regret. "If you're watching this," his voice began, "it means I couldn't keep my promise. It means you've grown, and the world has probably told you stories about me. Some true, some lies. But here's the truth." He paused, looking down as if searching for the right words. "I wasn't born a monster. I became one to survive. And then I met your mother, the first person who saw the man I could have been." Hannah's throat tightened. "People called me ruthless," he continued. "And maybe I was. But the day you were born, Hannah, I learned what real fear is. Fear of losing something pure. I built an empire of shadows, but you too. You were my light." Tears streamed down her face as his voice cracked. "If danger ever comes again, and it will, don't hide from who you are. You're my daughter, but more importantly, you're her daughter. That means your courage runs deeper than blood." The video ended. The room fell silent except for the hum of the laptop. Hannah sat frozen, her heart pounding. It was the first time she'd ever heard her father's voice. The ruthless mafia boss wasn't the monster she imagined. He was a man who had loved them enough to die for them. That night, she showed the video to Jae. He listened quietly, then whispered, "Do you think he'd want us to forget everything, or finish what he started?" Hannah looked at the silver watch gleaming in the light. "I think he'd want us to finish it, but differently." The next morning, Amara found the two of them standing in the rain outside the cafe, holding each other's hands. She didn't need to ask what they'd found. The look in Hannah's eyes said everything, a reflection of Ji-Won's fire and her own resilience. Amara sighed softly. "If you go searching for answers," she said, "remember what I learned too late: the past never dies quietly." Hannah hugged her. Then maybe it's time someone made it. Days later, they visited their father's grave for the first time. It was unmarked, hidden in a quiet field outside the city. Amara had buried him there herself. Far from the noise, the headlines, the blood. Hannah knelt, tracing the wet soil with her fingertips. "You'll never be forgotten," she whispered. "I'll make sure of it." A thunderclap rolled across the sky, and for a fleeting moment, she thought she saw his silhouette in the mist, standing, watching, proud. When they returned home, Hannah opened a notebook and began writing. Not about revenge, but about legacy. She sketched the story of a man who had loved fiercely, a woman who had forgiven deeply, and children who refused to live in fear. But unknown to them, someone else was watching. From a black car parked across the street, a figure lowered binoculars, murmuring, "The ghost's bloodline still breathes." He lit a cigarette and drove away. The storm wasn't over. It had just changed hands. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button right now and share it with someone who still believes love can rise from ashes. Because this isn't just a story, it's a reminder that even the darkest legacies can be rewritten when love refuses to die. 2 years had passed since Hannah discovered her father's message. She was 18 now, smart, fearless, and restless. Every night she dreamt of him calling her name through smoke and rain. It wasn't grief anymore. It was purpose. One quiet evening after closing the cafe, Amara asked Hannah to bring up a box of old receipts from the basement. While moving crates, Hannah noticed a crack in the wall near the gas line. Curiosity led her to pull it open, and there it was again. Another metal box, sealed tight and heavier than before. Inside were ledgers. Pages filled with names, coded transactions, and symbols she didn't recognize. Tucked inside the cover was a note in her father's handwriting. If you're reading this, it means the past has found you. Don't run. Finish what I couldn't. Hannah's hands shook. These weren't ordinary records. They were the inner map of Seoul's criminal web, evidence that could destroy or resurrect entire syndicates. She didn't know how her father had hidden it here, but now she understood why their family was still being watched. She hid the ledgers under her jacket and went upstairs. Jay was wiping tables. Amara was locking the door. Hannah whispered, "Mom, we need to talk." When Amara saw the ledgers, her face went pale. She sat down slowly. "He swore he burned these. Ji-Won wanted to keep you safe, Hannah. These books could start another war. Then why are we still being hunted?" Hannah demanded. "Why do black cars still slow down in front of the cafe? They're not looking for peace, Mom. They're looking for this." Amara closed her eyes. Because someone still wants the throne he left empty. That night, Hannah couldn't sleep. She studied the ledgers by candlelight, tracing each Korean character with her finger, whispering them aloud until she understood. They weren't just accounts. They were alliances, betrayals, and debts left unpaid. One name appeared repeatedly. Seo Dae-hyun. The same name engraved on a signboard of a luxury club downtown. The same building that had sent the car that watched their shop. By morning, Hannah made up her mind. She packed a backpack, slipped the ledgers inside, and left a note for her mother. "I'm going to end this before it reaches us again." When Amara woke and found the note, her scream shattered the silence. She ran to Jay, tears streaming. "She's gone." Jay grabbed his father's silver watch from the drawer. "Then we bring her back. No one hurts family." That evening, Hannah stood outside Club Hyun, the kind of place her father would have once owned. The bouncer eyed her suspiciously, but the moment she said, "Tell your boss Kang Ji-Won's daughter is here," the man froze. Within minutes, she was ushered inside. Seo Dae-hyun waited in a dim lounge, surrounded by guards. His smile was slow, dangerous. I wondered when the ghost's blood would come knocking. Hannah tossed the ledgers onto the table. "You've been threatening my family. That ends tonight." He opened the first page, smirking. "Your father kept good records. These ledgers, if made public, would topple half the underworld. That's why I need them. You hand them over, and your family walks free." She met his gaze. "You're lying." Dae-hyun leaned forward. "I don't lie to children." Before she could reply, chaos erupted at the entrance. Jay stormed in, swinging a pipe, scattering the guards. He yelled, "Hannah, run!" Bullets echoed. The twins ducked behind a marble pillar. Amara burst through the door moments later, clutching a kitchen knife. She'd followed them. Smoke, screams, glass, everything blurred. Hannah grabbed her mother's hand, dragging her toward the exit. But Dae-hyun called out behind them, "You can run, but Seoul will always remember who your father was." They escaped into the night, hearts pounding. In the alley, Amara looked at her children, one trembling, one burning with fire. "No more running," Hannah said softly. "If they want my father's ghost, I'll give them something real to fear." Amara realized then that her daughter wasn't a child anymore. The same storm that once brought Ji-Won into her life was now alive in Hannah's eyes. As dawn broke, they returned to the cafe. Hannah placed the ledgers on the counter and looked out the window. He built his empire in the shadows. I'll rebuild it in the light. Outside, a black car slowed, watching again. But this time, Hannah didn't flinch. She reached into her pocket, clutching her father's watch, and whispered, "Game on!" The storm had a new name now. Kang Ji-Won. If this chapter kept you hooked, subscribe right now and share it with someone who loves deep, emotional mafia stories. Because what began as her father's legacy is about to become her war, and trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. Weeks turned into months. News whispered of a mysterious figure moving through Seoul's underworld. Someone young, sharp, and merciless toward corrupt bosses. They called her the daughter of the ghost. But Kang Ji-Won didn't crave power. She wanted balance, justice for the blood her father spilled and the peace he died to protect. Every morning she still opened the cafe with her mother, smiling at customers as if nothing had changed. Every night, she vanished into the back streets, following names from the ledgers. She wasn't killing, she was exposing. She leaked files to journalists, crippled bank accounts, freed trafficked workers. The same network her father once used for crime became her tool for redemption. One night, a man waited for her outside the cafe, a tall, quiet stranger in a black suit. "You're Kang Ji-Won," he said, his accent clipped. "I worked for your father once. Before he died, he gave me a message to deliver, when you were ready." He handed her a small chip drive. On it, a single audio file, her father's voice. "If the past finds my children, don't fight the way I did. Build alliances. Find the man called the broker. He owes me his life." The stranger gave her an address before disappearing into the fog. That night Hannah and Jay took a train to Busan. The address led to an abandoned shipyard now turned into a tech den. Inside waited an older man with silver hair and kind eyes. "You look like him," he said quietly. "Your father saved my family. What do you need?" Hannah placed the ledgers on his desk. "I want to end every name in here, but I won't use bullets." The broker studied her for a long moment, then smiled. "You've got his fire, and her heart. Let's make history." For weeks they worked in secret, decrypting files, tracing accounts, releasing proof of the syndicate's crimes online under one symbol, a ghost with twin halos. Each drop brought chaos to Daehyun's empire. Soon every criminal in Seoul was hunting the ghost's daughter. Meanwhile, Amara sensed the danger closing in. "You're playing with fire," she warned. Hannah replied softly, "Then I'll make sure it burns clean." One evening the cafe was empty when Jay ran in, breathless. "They found us!" Black SUVs stopped outside. Men poured out, armed and silent. Amara pulled down the cafe lights. "Basement now." But Hannah didn't move. "If we keep running, it never ends." She stepped outside into the rain. Seo Daehyun himself stood there, smiling beneath an umbrella. "You remind me of your father," he said. "The same arrogance." "I call it courage," she answered. He nodded at his men. "Bring her in alive. Her mother too." But as they moved, the cafe lights flickered. The broker had activated the failsafe. Every device around the street glowed with the ghost's symbol. Daehyun's private accounts, his transactions, his hidden murders, all streamed live to the public. Panic rippled through his men. Hannah stepped forward. "My father ruled through fear. I'll end you with truth." Daehyun lunged, gun drawn, but Jay tackled him first. The weapon fired into the air, echoing through the wet streets. Police sirens wailed in the distance. When it was over, Daehyun was arrested, his empire crumbling. Hannah stood drenched, trembling, staring at the neon reflection of the ghost symbol fading on every screen. Her war was over. But the legend had just begun. The next morning, reporters flooded the street, calling her the girl who ended the Mafia. She said nothing. She simply opened the cafe, poured her mother a cup of coffee, and whispered, "He can rest now." Amara smiled softly. He'd be proud. Outside, the rain finally stopped. If you followed this far, take a moment, like, comment, and subscribe to Afro-Korean Stories Hub so you don't miss the final chapter of this saga. Because in the end, redemption isn't inherited, it's chosen. And Kang Ji-Won just chose hers. Months after Seo Daehyun's arrest, the city finally slept easier. Headlines hailed Kang Ji-Won as the girl who ended the Mafia. But she knew better. Power never disappears, it only changes hands. Peace was brief. One morning a foreign news channel flashed a headline across every cafe screen: International Syndicate seeks control of Seoul docks. The group was called the Orchid Ring, a network of traffickers stretching from Macau to Dubai. And the man fronting it was Anton Keller, a cold-eyed European crime lord who had once brokered arms deals with her father. Hannah watched the footage in silence. She recognized the tattoo on Keller's wrist, the same emblem carved on the gun that killed Ji-Won years ago. This wasn't over. It had only grown bigger. That night she met the broker again. "Keller's moving through Busan's ports," he said. "He's rebuilding what your father destroyed." Hannah clenched her fists. "Then I'll finish what he started. For good this time." She gathered her small alliance, Jay, the broker's hackers, and a few old loyalists of her father who still owed their lives to Amara's kindness. Together they planned a strike, not with bullets, but with exposure. Keller's empire lived on encrypted servers hidden inside shipping containers. Hannah's team infiltrated them under the guise of humanitarian shipments. Days turned into weeks of coded messages, silent operations, and narrow escapes. Then came the night of reckoning. Rain poured again, just as it had the night Ji-Won fell. The docks glowed with police lights and gunfire echoed between containers. Hannah moved like a shadow, her father's silver watch tight around her wrist. Keller cornered her near the edge of the pier. "You're his daughter," he said with a smirk. "He begged before he died." Her voice was calm. "You shouldn't have come back." He raised his gun. She threw a flare into the water, the signal. Sirens blared as hidden cameras broadcast the entire confrontation live. Every crime, every confession, every name Keller uttered in arrogance went straight to global networks. When he realized what she'd done, it was too late. The Orchid Ring collapsed within hours. As dawn broke, Hannah stood watching the ships burn. Amara appeared beside her, wrapping a coat around her shoulders. "Your father would have hated this life for you," she said softly. Hannah looked at her. "He gave it to me so I could end it." The broker approached, handing her a sealed envelope. "Found this in your father's vault. He left it for the day you finished his war." Inside was a single note written in Ji-Won's rough handwriting. "If love made me weak, it also made me human. If you read this, then my bloodline did what I never could, turn the ghost into light." Tears blurred the ink. Hannah whispered, "Rest now, Appa. The city's free." Years later, Twins and Coffee expanded into a foundation for victims of organized crime. The sign outside still bore the ghost symbol, no longer feared, but remembered. And every year, when rain touched the windows, Hannah would sit by the door, humming the lullaby her father once whistled. Somewhere beyond the storm, she believed he listened. Because even the ruthless can leave behind something pure. If this finale touched your heart, subscribe to Afro-Korean Stories Hub, leave a comment, and share it with someone who believes love can rewrite even the darkest story. Because this isn't just the end of a mafia tale, it's proof that redemption is the strongest legacy of all.